Imagine a sleepy suburb shattered by a crime so brutal, it defies belief. A teenager's dark secret, a chilling message online, and a night that ended in blood. What pushed one kid to destroy another's life, and how did he almost get away with it? Stay with me, because there's a twist in this story that'll leave you speechless. Let's unravel it together. It was Mother's Day 2021 in St. Johns County, Florida, a quiet coastal spot where kids rode bikes and neighbors waved hello. But beneath that sunny surface, something dark was brewing. Meet Tristan Bailey, a 13-year-old cheerleader with a contagious smile, loved by everyone who knew her. Then there's her classmate, Aiden Fucci, just 14, but carrying a shadow most couldn't see. That night, their paths crossed in a way that would leave a community broken and a nation stunned. This isn't just a crime, it's a plunge into a teenage mind unraveling, step by chilling step. So who was Aiden Fucci before that fateful night? Born November 6, 2006, he grew up in St. Johns, Florida, a picturesque town where families flocked for good schools and safe streets. His parents, Crystal Smith and Jason Fucci, raised him alongside two younger siblings in a home that, from the outside, seemed ordinary. Crystal, a cosmetologist who once ran a local salon, was known as a devoted mom, posting nostalgic photos of Aiden as a gap-toothed kid, calling him her heart. Jason, his dad, had a rougher past. Court records show arrests in 2003 for child abuse and lewd conduct with a minor, landing him in prison for over a year. By the time Aiden was born, Jason was out, trying to piece together a family life, though he'd later tangle with the law again in 2016 for a gas station brawl, his son, possibly Aiden, by his side. Aiden's childhood wasn't all shadows, though. His dad's letter to the judge paints a kid who loved video games, homemade chicken dumplings, and belting out John Denver's Country Roads on family drives. He held doors for strangers, cradled baby chicks with care, and spent weekends building cars or baking with cousins. But there were cracks. At Patriot Oaks Academy, where he was an 8th grader in 2021, Aiden was no stranger to trouble. Friends later told police he'd flash knives, sketch violent drawings, and talk about killing like it was a game. His girlfriend said he nicknamed his blades Picker and Poker, once pretending to slit her throat in a twisted joke. Was this a boy wrestling with a fractured home, or something darker festering inside? One thing's clear, by 14, Aiden Fucci was already a puzzle no one had solved. On May 8, 2021, a Saturday fading into Mother's Day. Tristan Bailey spent that evening like any 13-year-old might, hanging out with friends at a classmate's house in Durbin Crossing, a tidy subdivision just a mile from her own doorstep. Around midnight, the group dwindled, and surveillance cameras caught a fleeting glimpse, Tristan and Aiden Fucci walking together down a quiet street, side by side, shadows stretching under the glow of streetlights. They were headed toward a wooded patch near a retention pond, a spot kids sometimes cut through, nothing special. But this time, it would become a graveyard. What happened next is a blur of horror. Sometime after 1 a.m., in that tangled thicket of pines and palmettos, Aiden turned on Tristan. He pulled a knife, later found in that same pond, and plunged it into her again, and again, and again. When her body was discovered hours later, the autopsy told a story of unthinkable violence. 114 stab wounds, 49 of them defensive, etched into her hands and arms as she fought for her life. Blood soaked the earth, her cheerleading dreams snuffed out in the dark. Meanwhile, Aiden walked away, clothes stained, mind eerily calm, back to a house where his parents slept, oblivious. By dawn, Tristan's family was calling her phone, panic rising, while Aiden sat silent, his secret buried in the woods. How does a 14-year-old hide that kind of rage, or was he even hiding at all? Sunday morning, May 9, 2021, should have been a quiet Mother's Day in Durbin Crossing, but for the Bailey family, it was the start of a living hell. Tristan hadn't come home. By 10 a.m., her parents reported her missing, and the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office sprang into action. Her phone was off, her friends hadn't seen her since the night before, and a gnawing fear spread through the neighborhood. Then, around 6 p.m., a resident out for a walk stumbled across the unthinkable, Tristan's body, hidden in the woods near a retention pond off Saddlestone Drive, just a quarter-mile from her house. The scene was gruesome. 114 stab wounds riddled her body, 49 of them defensive, carved into her hands, arms, and head as she desperately tried to fend off her killer. This wasn't an accident, it was a slaughter. The sheriff's office didn't waste a second. Deputies rewound the clock, pulling surveillance footage from the Durban Amenity Center and a neighbor's camera. At 1:14 a.m., there they were, Tristan and Aiden Fucci, walking north together, casual as could be. By 1:45 a.m., another camera caught them near the pond. Then, at 3:27 a.m., just one figure, Aiden, trudged back alone. That timeline was damning, and it pointed straight to the 14-year-old who lived less than half a mile away. Deputies descended on the Fucci home that evening, and what they found wasn't a scared kid, it was a puzzle snapping into place. Aiden's story was flimsy. He said he'd last seen Tristan at a friend's house, that they'd split up hours earlier. But his sneakers were still wet from the night's dew, his bedroom held jeans soaked with blood, Tristan's blood, DNA tests would later prove, and a sheath for a buck knife sat empty on his dresser. While deputies searched, Aiden's mom, Crystal Smith, unraveled in real time. Body cam footage captured her rushing to the bathroom, scrubbing those bloody jeans in the sink, water turning pink as she muttered about her son's fate. She'd later claim she thought it was just dirt, but the sheriff's office saw it for what it was, tampering with evidence, a charge that'd stick months later. Meanwhile, divers scoured the pond near Tristan's body, fishing out a buck knife with a broken tip. The medical examiner matched that jagged edge to a fragment lodged in Tristan's scalp, irrefutable proof it was the murder weapon, one Aiden had nicknamed Poker to his friends. Sheriff Rob Hardwick called it a team effort, with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and dive crews working non-stop to lock down every shred of evidence. But the investigation wasn't just about physical clues, it was Aiden's behavior that turned heads. While deputies built their case, he was busy on Snapchat, posting a selfie from the back of a patrol car, smirking, throwing a peace sign, captioning it, "Hey guys, has anybody seen Tristan lately?" Like her death was a twisted joke. In a second clip, he vented alone, "Guess who's in a cop car, guys? Trippin', dude," his voice edged with defiance, not fear. Then, in the interrogation room, he didn't break. No tears, no panic, just a 14-year-old sketching doodles on a notepad, humming a tune, staring down detectives with a blankness that chilled them to the bone. Witnesses later told police he'd bragged about wanting to stab someone in the woods, dreams he'd shared with his girlfriend and classmates long before that night. Was this a kid too arrogant to hide, or a mind so detached it didn't care? Either way, the evidence was a noose tightening around him. So who was Aiden Fucci, really? We've seen the boy who loved video games and sang Country Roads with his dad, but there was another side, a shadow growing long before that night in the woods. At Patriot Oaks Academy, Aiden wasn't just another 8th grader. Classmates whispered about a kid who'd flip a switch, quiet one minute, unsettling the next. He'd sketch gory scenes in notebooks, knives slicing throats, blood pooling, doodles teachers brushed off as teenage angst. But his friends saw more. They told police he'd flash knives in the school parking lot, twirling blades he'd named like pets, Picker for the small one, Poker for the buck knife that'd end Tristan's life. One pal recalled him joking, "I'd stab someone just to see what it feels like," his laugh sharp enough to cut. Then there was his girlfriend, a 9th grader who'd dated him for months before that May night. She told detectives Aiden had a fixation, a fantasy he'd spin late at night, dragging someone into the woods, stabbing them silent under the trees. He'd mime it out, hand over her mouth, fake blade to her throat, grinning like it was a game. She laughed it off then, but after Tristan's death, those moments turned her stomach. His home life didn't explain it all. Crystal doted on him, baking cookies and posting proud mom updates online, while Jason's rough edges, those old arrests and bar fights, left a mark, but nothing screamed killer in the making. Psychiatric reports later hinted at ADHD and defiance issues, but no diagnosis pinned down the why. Aiden didn't hide his edge, he flaunted it. He'd bragged to a friend about stealing his dad's buck knife weeks before, said it'd be perfect for something big. Another classmate remembered him ranting about Tristan once, calling her too perfect, though no one knew if they were close or just crossed paths. Was he jealous, bored, or lost to some deeper void? Sheriff Hardwick called him a cold, calculated soul, but even that felt too simple. This was a 14-year-old who'd spent years building toward a moment, whether he knew it or not. A kid who could hug his mom, then dream of blood. What does it take to bridge that gap? Maybe the answer was locked inside him all along. By early 2023, Aiden Fucci's fate was barreling toward a courtroom in St. Johns County. The investigation had left no doubt: blood, DNA, that broken knife, his own words on Snapchat, it all pinned him to Tristan Bailey's murder. Prosecutors charged him with first-degree murder, a premeditated act, and at 16 now, he faced trial as an adult. Jury selection was set for February 6, 2023, but just hours before opening statements, Aiden threw a curveball. Standing in a red jail jumpsuit, shackles clinking, he pleaded guilty. No deal, no bargaining, just a flat, yes, I did it, his voice steady as the courtroom held its breath. His lawyers later said he wanted to spare the Baileys a trial, but the why didn't matter to a gallery packed with Tristan's loved ones, their sobs cutting through the silence. The sentencing hearing came a month later, March 21, 2023, and it was raw. Tristan's family took the stand, 7 of them bearing witness to their loss. Her sister Alexis dropped 114 black stones into a jar, one for each stab wound, her hands shaking as she read a poem titled Monster, calling Aiden a coward who'd stolen their light. Her mom, Stacy, clutched a cheerleading photo, voice breaking as she said, "He lived while she suffered, and will suffer every day he breathes." Aiden's team pushed back. His dad, Jason, wrote a letter begging for mercy, painting a boy who'd lost his way, not his soul. A neuropsychologist testified about Aiden's impulsivity, his fractured family, his remorse in jail letters. "I think about her every day," he'd scrawled. But the prosecution wasn't buying it. State Attorney R.J. Larissa called it a heinous, atrocious, cruel act, pointing to those 49 defensive wounds, proof Tristan fought while Aiden kept stabbing. On March 24, Judge R. Lee Smith handed down the sentence: life in prison. No parole, but because Aiden was 14 at the time of the crime, Florida law gave him a chance, a review after 25 years. The judge didn't mince words: this was not an impulsive killing. You planned it, you executed it, and you reveled in it. Aiden sat stone-faced, head bowed, as Tristan's family hugged through tears. Outside, blue ribbons still fluttered across St. John's, symbols of a girl gone, and a justice that felt both final and fragile. A life for a life, locked away, but could bars ever hold the chaos that made him? That question hung heavy as the gavel fell. The wheels of justice started grinding loud in St. Johns County by late 2022. Aiden Fucci, now 16, was staring down a first-degree murder charge, premeditated, cold-blooded, no room for mercy in the state's eyes. The evidence was a mountain: Tristan's blood on his clothes, that broken buck knife pulled from the pond, his own Snapchat posts mocking her death. Prosecutors weren't playing. This was an adult trial, death penalty off the table only because he'd been 14 when he killed her. Jury selection was locked for February 6, 2023, a Monday buzzing with tension. Reporters crowded the courthouse steps, Tristan's family in blue shirts clutching each other, ready to relive their nightmare. But then, minutes before the gavel could drop, a whisper rippled through the room: Aiden wanted to talk. What was he about to say? In a red jumpsuit, wrists and ankles shackled, he shuffled to the podium. The gallery froze as he looked up, face blank, and said, "I plead guilty." No plea deal, no negotiation, just a stark, "Yes, sir, I did it," to Judge R. Lee Smith's questions. Gasps broke the silence. Tristan's mom, Stacy, buried her face in her hands. His lawyers claimed it was to spare the family a trial's pain, but was that the whole story? Some whispered he'd cracked under the weight of evidence, others thought he'd planned this move all along. The judge set sentencing for March, leaving everyone dangling. Would remorse tip the scales, or had he just painted his own cell? March 21, 2023, brought the reckoning. The courtroom swelled with Tristan's loved ones. 7 Baileys took the stand, their voices a raw chorus of grief. Her sister Alexis, barely 17, clutched a jar and dropped 114 black stones inside, one clink for every stab wound, her hands trembling as she read "Monster," a poem branding Aiden a coward who'd bathed in her blood. Her mom, Stacy, held a framed photo of Tristan in her cheer uniform, tears choking her as she said, "He lived while she suffered 114 times over, I pray his every breath is agony." Tristan's dad, Forrest, stared Aiden down, voice steel, "You took her from us, but you'll never take her light." The air was thick, unbearable, yet Aiden just sat there, eyes on the table. What was he thinking as her words hit him? His defense fought back. His dad, Jason, penned a 10-page letter from jail, where he'd landed for violating probation, begging for a second chance, calling Aiden a good boy who stumbled. A neuropsychologist took the stand, detailing Aiden's ADHD, his underdeveloped frontal lobe, his chaotic home with a felon father and a mom who couldn't see the signs. She read his jail letters, "I think about Tristan every day, I'd give my life to undo it." Remorse, or a last-ditch act? The prosecution tore it apart. State Attorney R.J. Larissa stood firm. This was heinous, atrocious, cruel. 49 defensive wounds prove she fought while he stabbed, over and over. He played Aiden's Snapchat audio, "Trippin', dude," letting that smirk echo. Was this the real Aiden, unmasked at last? March 24 arrived, and Judge Smith leaned into his ruling. "This wasn't impulsive," he said, voice grave. "You planned it, lured her to those woods, executed her with 114 strikes, then reveled in it online." The sentence, life in prison, no parole, but a mandatory 25-year review because of his age, a faint crack in the wall, set for 2046. Aiden didn't flinch, head low as deputies led him out. Tristan's family wept, hugged, a bittersweet release after 22 months of hell. Outside, blue ribbons lined the streets, Tristan Bailey strong, a town still mourning. But as the doors closed on Aiden, a question lingered: had justice caged the chaos inside him, or was something worse still brewing behind those bars? March 24, 2023, didn't close the book on Tristan Bailey's story, it just turned the page to a new kind of quiet. In St. Johns County, the echoes lingered. Blue ribbons stayed tied to trees and mailboxes, a silent vow, Tristan Bailey strong, that her light wouldn't fade. Her family channeled their grief into action. The Bailey 7 movement, tied to her cheerleading number, raised funds for scholarships and youth programs, keeping her spirit alive in every pom-pom shake and kind word. Vigils still draw crowds on May 9 ths, her birthday marked with 7 candles, one for each year she'd lived before Aiden stole the rest. The woods where she died? They're a pilgrimage site now, dotted with flowers and notes, a sacred scar on a town that'll never feel safe the same way. Aiden's world, though, shrank to concrete and steel. Shipped to Sewanee Correctional Institution, he's inmate number V50515, 16 then, 18 now, a lanky figure in a prison jumpsuit. Reports trickled out, he's clashed with guards, racked up infractions, smoking, fighting, even extorting cash from other inmates with threats of shankings. In late 2023, a jail call surfaced. He laughed about his fan mail, bragged he'd be out by 40. Remorse, or just more games? His mom, Crystal, faced her own fallout. Convicted of evidence tampering in June 2023, she got 5 years probation and 30 days in jail for washing those bloody jeans. Jason's still locked up too, his probation violation keeping him caged while his son's life sentence ticks on. The case carved a deeper mark beyond Durban Crossing. It sparked debates, juvenile justice, parental blind spots, the line between troubled kid and killer. Sheriff Hardwick called it a wake-up call, pushing schools to flag warning signs like Aiden's knives and rants. Tristan's death rippled through Florida law too. Her 114 wounds fueled talks of tougher sentences for teens, though Aiden's 25-year review stands firm for 2046. Back in St. John's, some still see his face in the shadows, wondering, was this a boy who snapped, or a darkness born too early? A community heals, a family holds on, but the question gnaws, could anyone have stopped him, or was Tristan's fate sealed the moment Aiden picked up that knife? March 24, 2023, didn't close the book on Tristan Bailey's story, it just turned the page to a new kind of quiet. In St. Johns County, the echoes lingered. Blue ribbons stayed tied to trees and mailboxes, a silent vow, Tristan Bailey strong, that her light wouldn't fade. Her family channeled their grief into action. The Bailey 7 movement, tied to her cheerleading number, raised funds for scholarships and youth programs, keeping her spirit alive in every pom-pom shake and kind word. Vigils still draw crowds on May 9 ths, her birthday marked with 7 candles, one for each year she'd lived before Aiden stole the rest. The woods where she died? They're a pilgrimage site now, dotted with flowers and notes, a sacred scar on a town that'll never feel safe the same way. Aiden's world, though, shrank to concrete and steel. Shipped to Sewanee Correctional Institution, he's inmate number V50515, 16 then, 18 now, a lanky figure in a prison jumpsuit. Reports trickled out, he's clashed with guards, racked up infractions, smoking, fighting, even extorting cash from other inmates with threats of shankings. In late 2023, a jail call surfaced, he laughed about his fan mail, bragged he'd be out by 40. Remorse, or just more games? His mom, Crystal, faced her own fallout. Convicted of evidence tampering in June 2023, she got 5 years probation and 30 days in jail for washing those bloody jeans. Jason's still locked up too, his probation violation keeping him caged while his son's life sentence ticks on. The case carved a deeper mark beyond Durban Crossing. It sparked debates, juvenile justice, parental blind spots, the line between troubled kid and killer. Sheriff Hardwick called it a wake-up call, pushing schools to flag warning signs like Aiden's knives and rants. Tristan's death rippled through Florida law too. Her 114 wounds fueled talks of tougher sentences for teens, though Aiden's 25-year review stands firm for 2046. Back in St. John's, some still see his face in the shadows, wondering, was this a boy who snapped, or a darkness born too early? A community heals, a family holds on, but the question gnaws, could anyone have stopped him, or was Tristan's fate sealed the moment Aiden picked up that knife? March 24, 2023, didn't close the book on Tristan Bailey's story, it just turned the page to a new kind of quiet. In St. Johns County, the echoes lingered. Blue ribbons stayed tied to trees and mailboxes, a silent vow, Tristan Bailey strong, that her light wouldn't fade. Her family channeled their grief into action. The Bailey 7 movement, tied to her cheerleading number, raised funds for scholarships and youth programs, keeping her spirit alive in every pom-pom shake and kind word. Vigils still draw crowds on May 9 ths, her birthday marked with 7 candles, one for each year she'd lived before Aiden stole the rest. The woods where she died? They're a pilgrimage site now, dotted with flowers and notes, a sacred scar on a town that'll never feel safe the same way. Aiden's world, though, shrank to concrete and steel. Shipped to Sewanee Correctional Institution, he's inmate number V50515, 16 then, 18 now, a lanky figure in a prison jumpsuit. Reports trickled out, he's clashed with guards, racked up infractions, smoking, fighting, even extorting cash from other inmates with threats of shankings. In late 2023, a jail call surfaced. He laughed about his fan mail, bragged he'd be out by 40. Remorse, or just more games? His mom, Crystal, faced her own fallout. Convicted of evidence tampering in June 2023, she got 5 years probation and 30 days in jail for washing those bloody jeans. Jason's still locked up too, his probation violation keeping him caged while his son's life sentence ticks on. The case carved a deeper mark beyond Durban Crossing. It sparked debates, juvenile justice, parental blind spots, the line between troubled kid and killer. Sheriff Hardwick called it a wake-up call, pushing schools to flag warning signs like Aiden's knives and rants. Tristan's death rippled through Florida law too. Her 114 wounds fueled talks of tougher sentences for teens, though Aiden's 25-year review stands firm for 2046. Back in St. John's, some still see his face in the shadows, wondering, was this a boy who snapped, or a darkness born too early? A community heals, a family holds on, but the question gnaws, could anyone have stopped him, or was Tristan's fate sealed the moment Aiden picked up that knife?